Today, we're going to break down one of the most fundamental tenses in English, the present simple. It sounds easy, right? But it's got a few little tricks. Don't worry though, because by the end of this, you're going to have them all down cold.
So, here's our roadmap. First, we'll do a quick refresher on what a tense even is. Then, we'll dive into the 5 key situations where you'll always use the present simple. After that, we're going to get our hands dirty building sentences, nail down those tricky spelling rules, and finally, we'll look at the biggest mistakes people make so you can sidestep them completely.
Okay, let's kick things off with something that trips up so many English learners. You see these 2 sentences, I work and I am working. They look almost the same, and they both seem to be about the present.
So, what's the deal? Well, even though they both feel present, they mean totally different things. And that's exactly what we're about to unpack. One is for what's happening right now, while the other is for the big picture. Things that are always true, your habits, the permanent stuff. And that's our focus today.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's just take one quick step back. We got to make sure we're all on the same page about what a tense is in the first place. Think of it as our foundation.
It's not as complicated as it sounds. Tenses are basically just time travel for our verbs. They're how we tell people when an action is happening. Is it in the past, right now in the present, or sometime in the future? That's all a tense does. It puts the action on a timeline.
Okay, and here is the single most important idea to get your head around. The present simple, well, its name is a little misleading. It's almost never about what you're doing this very second. Instead, think of it as the tense for stuff that's permanent, things that are generally true.
All right, that's the big idea, but when do you actually use it? Let's get super practical. I've got a 5-point toolkit for you. These are the 5 main situations where you'll reach for the present simple every single time.
So, we're talking about permanent situations, your daily routines and habits, general facts and truths, schedules, and when you're talking about how often something happens. Let's break them down one by one with some examples.
First up, permanent situations. So if you say, he works at a bank, you're not talking about what he's doing right this minute. You're saying this is his job. It's a stable, long-term part of his life.
Number 2 is for routines and habits, things you do over and over again. I wake up at 6 every day. See, it's a habit. It happens on repeat. It's a predictable part of your daily life. Then we have general facts and truths. This one's a biggie. The sun rises in the east. That's not just true today. It was true 1,000 years ago, and it'll be true tomorrow. It's a universal fact. The present simple is perfect for these kinds of certainties.
Okay, next up, schedules. You might wonder, why schedules? Well, think about it. A schedule is just a routine for an event, right? So when you say our class starts at 9, you mean it's a fixed, repeating event, just like a train schedule. And last but not least, you'll use it with adverbs of frequency. These are words that tell you how often something happens. Words like always, often, sometimes, rarely, or never. If you see one of these words, it's a huge flashing sign that you probably need the present simple.
Okay, so now you know when to use it. Awesome. Let's move on to the how. How do we actually put the sentences together? The positive ones, the negative ones, and of course, the questions.
So for positive sentences, it's actually pretty straightforward, for the most part. I work, you work, we work, they work. Easy. But, and this is the big one, you gotta remember he, she, and it. For those 3, the verb always gets an S on the end. She works, he works, it works. If you remember nothing else, remember that little S. It's super important.
Now, what about negative sentences? Here, we need a little help from our friends don't and doesn't. So, they don't work. And for he, she, or it, he doesn't work. Now pay close attention here. Once you use doesn't, the S on the main verb disappears. The doesn't does all the work for you.
And for questions, it's a similar idea. We just take do or does and pop it right at the beginning. Do you work? Does it work? And just like with the negative form, the main verb stays simple. No S at the end. Do and does handle everything.
Awesome. You've got the basic structures down pat. Now let's get into a couple of the finer points, the details that will really make you sound like a pro. We're talking spelling rules and how to give short answers.
So that little S we add for he, she, and its isn't always just an S. Most of the time, yeah, it is. Like cook becomes cooks. But if a verb ends in a hissing sound like S, SH, CH, or X, we add ES to make it easier to say. Think wash becomes washes. Sounds better, right? And the other big one, if a verb ends in a consonant and then a Y, you change that Y to IES, so study becomes studies. We also see some irregulars, like go becomes goes, do becomes does, and have becomes has.
Okay, let's talk about real conversations. Imagine someone asks you, does he speak French? Now you could say, yes, he speaks French, but nobody really talks like that. It sounds a bit like a robot. There's a much shorter, more natural way to answer.
And here it is. You just use that little helping verb from the question. So, does he speak French? The answer is simply, yes, he does, or no, he doesn't. That's it. It's fast, it's easy, and it's exactly how people actually speak. Okay, we are in the home stretch. For our last point, let's lock in everything we've learned by looking at one of the most common slip-ups. I mean, if you can dodge this one mistake, you'll be way ahead of the curve. And here it is. It's all about that why spelling rule we just talked about. It's so easy to see a word like play become plays and think, okay, I'll just add an S to try and get tries. But nope. You got to remember that rule. Consonant plus Y means the Y changes to IES, so try becomes tries. It's a tiny little detail, I know, but getting it right makes a world of difference. So, now it's over to you. You've got the whole toolkit. You know the what, the when, and the how. So take a second and think about your own life. What's one thing you always do? Maybe a habit, a routine, something that's just a fact about you. Go on, give it a shot. Answering that question is the first real step to making this tense feel completely natural. Hope this helped you out.